And I'm gonna hit mute real quick. Hold on.
You are?
Yeah, it's telling me to wait.
Oh.
Let's see.
I think we live, we just ain't recording yet. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And you recording it? Got you. All right. Hello and welcome to the Lost Confederacy channel. This is week 10 of the 13-week fiscal program of recovery for American prisoners of war. We have myself, Chief Eco. Today we have Chief Alligator as well as Chief Quietwater. And here's always, we focus more so on that first letter in the acronym APOW, which is American. Before we get started today, we have to continue to, reiterate and drive home the point in regards to what we've been just going over within the past, I would say, couple months, maybe even 3, in regards to the Civil Rights Acts. And again, trying to find where we've been adopted into this corporation known as the United States government. I know during last week's readings, we went over the titles, did a summary of pretty much everything that we went over. And I'm going to share my screen with you all right now. Just again, pinpointing exactly what each title in that 1964 Civil Rights Act hit on. One, it being voting rights, injunctive relief against discrimination in places of public accommodation, desegregation, commission of civil rights, equal employment, so forth and so on. But again, none of this stuff is really what our grandparents, parents, and some even great grandparents is really fighting for. They didn't give a damn about no voting rights. They didn't give a damn about, having any equal employment opportunities because we had our own towns and businesses. We just wanted to stop the murders and the war from taking place on our people. But again, when we read that actual act, we didn't see anything regarding our people. We seen terms talking about race, national origin, color, religious belief, but again, nothing pertaining to the Negro, colored, or anything else that we've been reclassified underneath in this government. And before we jump into the actual video, again, highlighting, what was his name? Lyndon B. Johnson at the time, the president, again, quoting these same Civil Rights Acts, and then right after stating what those acts were for, mentioning the Negro as if the Negro was specified within these documents. So we're going to watch a quick little video again, because again, we have to continue to nail this point down, continue to put this into our memory bank so we understand the difference between an announcement, aka a proclamation, and what's actually being written within these laws.
Even while President Johnson talked to Chancellor Klaus about America's responsibility in a time of crisis and challenge, word came from Capitol Hill that Congress had passed and sent to the White House the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Included in the measure was a landmark open housing bill, which, when fully effective, would forbid discrimination in approximately 80% of all housing offered for rent or for sale in the United States.
I do not exaggerate when I say that the proudest moments of my presidency have been times such as this, when I have signed into law the promises of a century. I shall never forget that it is more than 100 years ago when Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. But it was a proclamation. It was not a fact. And in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, we affirm through law that men equal under God are also equal when they seek a job, when they go to get a meal in a restaurant, or when they seek lodging for the night in any state in the Union. And now the Negro families no longer suffer the humiliation of being turned away because of their race. In the Civil Rights Act of 1965, we affirm through law for every citizen in this land the most basic right of democracy, the right of a citizen to vote in an election in his country. In the 5 states where the act had its greater impact, Negro voter registration has already more than doubled. Now with this bill, the voice of justice speaks again. It proclaims that fair housing for all human beings who live in this country is now a part of the American way of life. We all know that the roots of injustice run deep, but violence cannot redress a solitary wrong or remedy a single unfairness. And we just must put our shoulders together and put a stop to both. The time is here. Action must be now.
So again, pretty much as I highlighted before we watch that video, that clipping, again, mentioning these acts that we have read or we're about to go over and read, again, stating about these new rights that the Negro has, but again, not specifying any of those rights for the Negro. Again, kind of a catch-all, a Pandora's box when stating, you know, race, color, creed, national origin. But again, having all of this be presented as if it's for the Negro when in actuality it's for everyone, and for the world to benefit from. And kind of just want to pick you all's brains and let you all build on that before we get into these readings, as well as the Inventor. So whoever wants to kind of throw in their 2 cents in regards to that, go ahead.
Chief Quadwater, you want to build on that first? You on mute?
You can go first. I'm trying to do something real quick. You can go first.
Okay. Yeah, those titles that you showed, this is basic information that we should know if we're adhering to the first law of nature, which is self-preservation. This is why you cannot let another group of people tell you your history. And you have to be unapologetic about that when you come to the table when it talks about your history on the land known as America. Secondly, I'm gonna go a step further and say, based on law, because law and history goes together, Lyndon Baines Johnson was the first president of the Negro. George Washington was not your first president. Abraham Lincoln was not your first president. The first president for the Negro was Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1964. And unless somebody can provide proof of claim, well, you can't provide proof of claim showing otherwise, because we just played the video. You weren't a citizen under their government. You were under intense military occupation. You couldn't go where you wanted to go. You couldn't go downtown, whatever city you live in. You were relegated to the west side, on the other side of the tracks, as they would say. And they can kill you if you was over on the other side of town during the daytime. So it sounds a lot like Vietnam and Afghanistan and Iraq, all these different wars that have happened. They always talk about, if I'm gonna use Afghanistan or Vietnam for an example, during the daytime, everybody gets along. And then at night, the gunplay happens. And so that's what was happening on this land. When you really think about it, that's what segregation was. It was intense military occupation. You could operate in commerce during the day, but when the night go down, you better not get caught in the wrong time and in the wrong area, because it was gunplay. So this has been active war being waged against us by the United States government And what we're also saying is this government has hundreds and thousands of treaties, but they don't have hundreds and thousands of declarations of war. What we're saying is we never got our ass whooped. You just been stealing us. So what we're doing as men, the American people who look like me that have lineage on this land, we're waiting for them to tell us that we're in a fight. That's not how they have gotten to where they are on this land. They are sneaking us and hiding behind the fact that they're waging war on us. And that's where I am with it. That's our biggest problem. We want them to openly tell us that they've declared war against the Negro. They've never done that in any war on this land. There is no declaration of war. Specifically for the Seminole Wars and for the Civil Rebellion. There is no document where they proclaim to the world that this is what we're about to do. And so that's the only reason why they're up on us right now, because if Biden came out tomorrow and said, we're declaring war on the Negro, they'll lose because they're infiltrated as well. We work in these public sectors now, right? But they're never declaring that. So I'll stop right there, Chief Whitewater.
I just think that it's just important for us to take this information and really understand that it's not hard to understand that the fact that it wasn't these declarations and this proclamation was specifically, it finally said the Negro. So we have to understand prior to that, of course, like we keep saying, that it was not for us. We were never a part of it. So they just threw that in because at that point, you know, we were fighting, we were doing what we had to do in regards to protesting and things like that, but it still hasn't gotten us anywhere. So like Chief Alligator said, we have to wake up and we have to kind of be knowledgeable now and more awake in the terms of they have been warring against us since way back when. Now, when are we going to do anything about it and fight that? Because this stuff is in plain sight. It's not hidden. You know, they're telling us basically what's going on. So that's my thoughts on it.
Great points from both of y'all. Great points from both of y'all. And like you said, at the end of the day, it comes down to same commonality. What are we going to do about it as a group of people? Are we willing to fight? Are we willing to lay down our lives? Something Joe Judge Brown said, what is it? Might is right. So damn what your title may be or your status underneath this government, are you willing to fight for your land back, or do you just want to be like the immigrant, turn U.S. citizen and just get your piece of the puzzle and play along within this game? And that's just the reality we have to deal with, because we all know in our spirit, it's like, damn, why? No, I don't want just that piece. And you may not be able to put your thumb on why you don't want that job. You just don't want that piece. But, you know, subconsciously, you may, your interbeing is saying, no, you don't want that piece because all of this shit is yours. So until we actually put two and two together by reading these documents, understanding this history, understanding who we are on this land, then it's going to be the same narrative. But again, we're going to have to fight for our shit back. And that's just the plain and simple right there. With that being said, I'll go ahead and have Chief Alligator present this week's American Inventor. And then we'll get into the quote and the readings.
All right, let me see. Should be able to pull this up. Y'all see this?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so today's inventor is going to be Lewis Fred Booker. And he invented the rubber scraping knife. The federal patent number is 30404. And the date is March 28th, 1899. Mr. Booker was from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This design is used for fine china, glassware, and the like. The rubber blade is in an oval form, which is right here where my cursor is pointing. So basically this device was designed for your fine china and your fine glassware in order to clean it. And I just, the family of LF Booker does not receive a percentage of income for this invention that the world benefits from. Those that have fine dining items, fine art, fine glassware. And lastly, all of these inventors that we're showing are engineers. So just always keep that in the back of your mind. When we show you an inventor, we're showing you an engineer. And most of these people did not, quote unquote, graduate what we now know as college in 2023, but these people were engineers. So that's today's inventor, Mr. Lewis Fred Booker.
All right, that's a good one. That's a very good one there.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Next, we'll go ahead and have Chief Quietwater with this week's Dr. Woodson quote. And which quote did you want to go with this week there?
I'm going to do 5.
Okay.
So real
Oh, shoot. Hold on. I have to blow this thing back a little bit. Okay.
Real education means to inspire people to live more abundantly, to learn to begin with life as they find it and make it better. But the instruction so far given Negroes in colleges and universities has worked to the contrary. In most cases, such graduates have merely increased the number of malcontents who offer no program for changing the undesirable conditions about which they complain. One should rely upon protest only when it's supported by a constructive program. I think this one is important, kind of piggybacking off of what we're kind of saying in regards to you can be educated and you can have all of this education, but the real knowledge and wisdom is coming from reading these documents and totally understanding where we are in this society and on this land. And I think that this is important for us to know that you don't have to be highly educated or a college graduate to just know the basics about how to overcome where we are right now. And I think that is important, for us to know that if we are going to protest and stand for something, that is going to have to be collective and it's going to have to be some type of, like this says, constructive program so that we can move forward as a group of people.
Yeah, if I can just add one thing on that before you move from that document. Think about every war that the United States military has went into in our lifetime, Iraq and Afghanistan. The media will portray kids with AK-47s as a bad thing, but those people in that land actually know their history and they actually know what they're fighting for. So the way that they're able to occupy America is through military brainwashing camps called school. If they can write curriculum to school you into not knowing that you're from the land, that allows them to move freely and safely in North America without having to worry about retaliation. They could never do that in Afghanistan because they didn't need a school in Afghanistan. The people knew they were from the land. And so they could never colonize Iraq or Afghanistan because from men, women, and children, everybody knew who the foreigner was and who the sovereign people were. So I just wanted to throw that in as well. We're at a place right now where we only recite back to what we were orally told through school. And then when you come with a clean glass of water, which is what we're doing, it's like a culture shock to a lot of us. And shout out to the person that sent that email to us, who had a PhD and who was at a HBCU that we put on our community page, because that speaks volumes about being open-minded and being able to say, wait a minute, I know I got letters in front of my name. I know I was a professor at a HBCU, but you know what? This history that I was teaching and that I learned doesn't jive with my family tree. And that's what it's going to take. for us to really wake up. The other side of that is the finance. A lot of people have intellectual property called books and movies that they've invested in this propaganda of us being slaves and us coming from another land. So as we wake up, it hurts their business model because they've already invested and wrote literature saying otherwise. So there could be an infight amongst ourselves as well, because as we wake up, we bust the narrative of the literature that's been written. Now, it could be written in error because they didn't have access to these documents. That was before the information age. Or they could have written it going along with the propaganda. I'm gonna stop right there.
No, great points and excellent quote for this week. And like you said, it just is in a complete alignment with what we're talking about. Not only in regards to, you know, the civil rights acts, but just in general. Like, real education means to inspire people to live more abundantly. That sentence alone in itself should tell you pretty much exactly what you just highlighted there, Chief Alligator, as well as Chief Quietwater. When you're really educated on who you are, that should inspire you to live more abundantly because you know who you are. So going back to understanding we are from this land, once you are educated on that fact, then nothing less than having all of your land back will suffice. So now we go into, you know, your Pan-Africans and these other belief systems. When you're educated in these aspects, are you really being educated to live more abundantly? Especially if you're agreeing that you were brought over here on ships and you're just, you know, happy to get a piece of the pie, then yeah, you're fine with being just that. But again, once you find you trace your history back, you see, oh, hell no, I'm from this land, okay? My people was fighting against these people this whole time.
Right.
Now you start to see like, oh no, damn your 40 acres and a mule, damn your Social Security, damn your stocks, all that shit. I want everything plus interest. I want my land back. I want my inventions back. I want our towns back, our capitals. I want my government back. I want every damn thing back. And that's when you live more abundantly. Anything less than that, you just settling. So that's what I pretty much took away just from that quote.
And the fact that this was, when did he write Miseducation of the Negro? You want to move?
In the 1920s.
And that's just sad, period. The fact that all of this stuff is still relevant, you know?
Correct. But again, that's why we're, as Chief Alligator stated, providing that clean glass of water to shock the system, to make sure that we are providing something different, something clean and something pure for the people. So without further ado, going to jump into the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So last week we finished off on the 1964 Civil Rights Act. This one is known as the Voting Rights Act. This is the 1965 Civil Rights Act. So here we have 89th Congress of the United States of America at the first session begun and held at the city of Washington on Monday, the 4th day of January, 1965. All right, and this here is an act to enforce the 15th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States and for other purposes. So be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that this act shall be known as the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Section 2, no voting qualification or prerequisite to voting or standard practice or procedure shall be imposed or implied by any state or political subdivision to deny or abridge the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color. Section 3, whenever the Attorney General institutes a proceeding under any statute to enforce the guarantees of the 15th Amendment in any state or political subdivision, the court shall authorize the appointment of federal examiners by the United States Civil Service Commission in accordance with Section 6 to serve for such period of time and for such political subdivision as the court shall determine is appropriate to enforce the guarantees of the 15th Amendment. as part of any interlocutory order, if the court determines that the appointment of such examiners is necessary to enforce such guarantees, or as part of any final judgment, if the court finds that violation of the 15th Amendment justifying equitable relief have occurred in such state or subdivision, provided that the court need not authorize the appointment of examiners, if any incidents of denial or abridgment of the rights to vote on account of race or color have been few in number and have been promptly and effectively corrected by the state or local action, the continuing effect of such incidents has been eliminated, and there is no reasonable probability of their recurrence in the future. So here in this first section, looks like they will have some federal examiners brought to or appointed by the Civil Service Commission if there has been any notice of trying to deny people the right to vote based off of race or color, basically having them appointed to make sure that this does not happen. But basically, if these, when it says here, just provided, the court need not authorize the appointment. If there's been few in number, or if they basically have said that, hey, we've corrected that action and this won't happen again. That's what I'm seeing here as far as there won't be a need for these examiners if that state or county or whoever is having this notice brought to or brought upon them on, if they come back to the state or come back to that federal examiner saying, hey, we've corrected these actions, that examiner won't be necessary within those procedures. If in a proceeding instituted by the Attorney General.
Hold on a second, Chief Biko. Can you scroll back up? We got to pull up the 15th Amendment because it's referring to the 15th Amendment. So we need to refresh ourselves. What is the 15th Amendment? Because if you scroll back up toward the top when you started reading, it's saying that this 1965 Civil Rights Act is basically to enforce the 15th Amendment. So if one of y'all can pull the Constitution up so we can refresh ourselves with what the 15th Amendment states. And then my second question is, what document made us US citizens to have the right to vote? We know that there's documents that immigrants get because they come through on visas and then they get green cards. What document did the Negro get that made him a US citizen that gave him the right to vote?
Correct. We're going to pull up the preamble here with the amendments. So to refresh our memory, refresh our mind, make sure we're in alignment. It states here that the 15th Amendment, Section 1, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or obliged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Section 2, the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
Okay, so this is further proven to us that Lyndon Baines Johnson was the quote unquote Negro's first president, because the lie or the narrative that they tell us in school is that there was a civil war and then that war was fought to quote unquote free us. And then you get the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, right? If that's the case, then why would you need a 1965 Voting Rights Act coming from Congress to give us the right to vote?
Right.
Y'all want to build
Just
on
lies. Just lies all around the board. Yeah, it don't make any sense. Now that we're just breaking everything down, we have literally just taken in and regurgitated everything that we were taught without reading like literal documents, because that is a contradiction. Two ends of the spectrum.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, it gets to the point where folks want to attach themselves to, you know, the race, color, or previous condition. So you got not only people that say, oh yeah, we were slaves, so that would account for us as the previous condition of servitude, or, you know, the race, you know, we African descent, so that's what they mean by race. And then we come to color, just, you know, we Black. So again, trying to attach yourselves that way you can, force your way into these documents when they're clearly showing you that, hey, you motherfuckers wasn't accounted for until the 65 Civil Rights Act. So even though we're showing you clear and present, like you just stated, if we were supposed to be covered within this initial document, if we were the slaves freed after the Civil Rebellion, then there would be no need for this 65. But again, people want to fight the truth for some reason. But yes, it's plain as day, showing you here that, yeah, they wasn't referring to us in regards to these 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments.
So ask the other question. The other question, and this is a hard question. What document made us a citizen? I'm being dead serious, because if we're benign and neglected in 2023, if Congress and the Black Congressional Caucus cannot write specific law for our group of people, my question is, what am I trying to say?
Yeah, literature shows that law. Yeah.
What document made us a U.S. citizen? Because what we're complaining about now in 2023 is we never get nothing specific. So again, immigrants have documents that prove their citizenship.
Right.
What did our parents get or our grandparents get that they can say, hey, here's when we became U.S. citizens?
Yeah. What
This is
certification?
right.
What damn, yeah, what document? Because again, if let's just play again, devil's advocate, they're saying that this original one, these original 15th Amendments didn't apply to us. So now we have to cover this 65, right? We're reading right now, we haven't read through the whole document, but what we just read is that it cannot be against race or color. So again, they're not specifying our group of people. So what makes us think that these 65 Civil Rights Acts is for us? They're still not specific in regards to who they're talking about it applies to. So it's the same shit.
I'm finna say something.
Go ahead.
I'm finna say something, and it looks like the Black Congressional Caucus was actually a liaison caucus set up to represent the Africans from Africa. That's why it doesn't represent us. Did you catch that? Because there's nothing specific for the American Negro. It looks like this caucus is Africans. So they changed the name from Negro to Afro-American to make the American Indian on the land think that it's for him, when in reality, that entity is for the real people coming from the continent of Africa that are coming over to get their citizenship. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, that may be,
that
makes more sense.
And then the guise of making it the Congressional Black Caucus, its name is just as a catch-all to make you smoke and mirrors. Okay, so they represent us, but again, all of their documents say African American. Just like it would say if there was for the Hispanic, the Mexican American, or whichever Hispanic or Spanish country, before that American. So you can say Italian American, British American, same thing, so forth and so on. So again, that African American, that's not representing us. So now again, it's continued benign and neglect that we're still seeing to this day.
Correct. And Original Skywalker said birth certificate. I would say it's not the birth certificate, because my mother has a birth certificate. She's born in the 1950s. Her birth certificate says colored. So it can't be the birth certificate that made us citizens, because my mom wasn't a citizen. If my mom is born in 52, the Congress didn't make a law until 64. So we can't say birth certificate, because my grandparents got birth certificates. My dad, my mom got birth certificates, but they were born before 1964. So I could be wrong, but I'm just reading and comprehending. If you got a 15th Amendment for voting, but then you had to reinforce it in 1965, which allowed us to vote, here's further proof it didn't apply to us. But then you're making it hard for people who look like us that have invested their lives in the school system, because now the lie is coming apart.
Right.
Yeah.
The whole story is falling apart. I'm gonna stop right there.
No, them great points though. Them great points. pull up this here. Let me stop. Okay. If in a proceeding instituted by the Attorney General under any statute to enforce the guarantees of the 15th Amendment in any state or political subdivision, the court finds that a test or device has been used for the purpose or with the effect of denying or abridging the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color, it shall suspend the use of tests and devices in such state or political subdivision as the court shall determine is appropriate and for such period as it deems necessary. If in any proceeding instituted by the Attorney General under any statute to enforce the guarantees of the 15th Amendment in any state or political subdivision, the court finds that violations of the 15th Amendment justifying equitable relief have occurred within the territory of such state or political subdivision, the court, in addition to such relief as it may grant, shall retain jurisdiction for such period as it may deem appropriate, and during such period, no voting qualification or prerequisite to voting or standard, practice, or procedure with respect to voting different from that in force or effect at the time the proceeding was commenced shall be enforced unless and until the court finds that such qualification, prerequisite, standard, practice, or procedure does not have the purpose and will not have the effect of denying or abridging the right to vote on the account of race or color, provided that such qualification, prerequisite, standard, practice, or procedure may be enforced if the qualification, prerequisite, standard, practice, or procedure has been submitted by the chief legal officer or other appropriate official of such state or subdivision to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General has not interposed an objection within 60 days after such submission, except that neither the court's finding nor the Attorney General's failure to object bar a subsequent action to enjoin enforcement of such qualification, prerequisite, standard, practice, or procedure. So it looks like they have a way to opt out of or have a way to implement these qualifications, prerequisites, standards, practices, or procedures. They're giving the state a way to pretty much implement or enforce those practices by sending a, what did it say? Not a notice.
Yeah, you got to scroll back up because you're reading a lot. It's a lot in there.
Submitted. So they have to submit something with the chief legal officer, and they have 60 days as far as the Attorney General to pretty much object whatever that state or that subdivision within that locality is bringing to that Attorney General. But you do want to build on something within this
Yes,
section.
Yeah, subsection C, it's a lot here. So you know how they do run-on sentences. So when you're reading a lot, it's a lot in here. Where we say race or color, where it says, or abridging the right to vote on the account of race or color, go down. Your cursor right there. Yep. Okay. Based on the 15th Amendment and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, 90% of the world is melanated. So what the United States government is doing is they're about to open their doors for melanated people around the world to become a citizen. It's clear because they keep saying race or color. So a man from Vietnam is going to be melanated. Most people from Asia have melanin in their skin. Most people from the continent of Africa have melanin in their skin. If you come from the continent of Australia, you got melanin in your skin.
Which is how a lot of the Asians came here and monopolized in different industries. A lot of the Arabs came here and monopolized in the, different industries and still run those industries today.
Correct. So when we look at law and align it with history, yeah, the Europeans set up a government strictly for themselves on July 4th, 1776. They had an infight known as a civil rebellion in the mid 1800s. And then in the 1960s, they decided that, all right, we now want to grow our business and take it worldwide. We want to take our government worldwide. So we're going to allow our women and we're going to allow all people, regardless of color around the world, to be US citizens. But again, when I look at my family tree and look at my lineage, there's no entry point for us. And once that document cited to the 15th Amendment, I'm going to do a little bit more research on this, but I believe the Black Congressional Caucus was set up for the immigrants coming from the continent of Africa. Because when we'll go to their page before the end of this breakdown today and look at who they clearly represent. They don't strictly represent us. They represent the people in Africa. You see what I'm saying? Because that would be color. Under the 1965 Voting Rights Act and under the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the Black Congressional Caucus is pretty much set up to protect these immigrants that have melanin in their skin, which is how we're getting pushed out. If I'm wrong, you know, hey, we all, if your family tree stays on the land of America, hey, is your history just like it's mine? Look into that. I believe this Black Congressional Caucus and just to tie in Tyree Nichols, how we forget, it's been about 6 weeks since they aired the Tyree Nichols murder. We're also going to go back to the Congress website. Has the Black Caucus entered any kind of police reform bill since that man has been killed? And you got another man that got shot in the mouth in Mississippi. Have they entered any kind of legislation for police reform? They can never represent us specifically because they're not representing us. They're representing the Africans. They're representing the nations coming from the continent of Africa. These people work for the Guyanese and the Nigerian. I'm going there. Prove me wrong. If I'm wrong, prove me wrong, which is why my generation gets the Pan-Africanism and the Afro-American hit on us, right? Because they're really caping for the African immigrant. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong.
It makes more sense than the narrative.
No, I would agree. I would definitely agree, especially in regards to that race or color as well. Because I know a lot of them photos that we showed when breaking down that Freedmen's Bureau and showing exactly who the freedmen were, especially those immigrants coming through Ellis Island. A lot of them had melanin in them. You know, a lot of them look, you know, what we would say as, you know, Hispanic or Mexican or something like that today. So that's very key. Like you stated, that's very key to point out when they say race or color. Don't just think, okay, now they're talking about us. No, like you stated, everybody, majority of this world has melanin in them or are of some type of darker skin tone. So that's very key to and important to understand. I'll continue here on section 4 to assure that the right of citizens of the United States to vote is not denied or obliged on account of race or color. No citizen shall be denied the right to vote in any federal, state, or local election because of his failure to comply with any test or device in any state with respect to which the determinations have been made under subsection B, or in any political subdivision with respect to which such determinations have been made as a separate unit, unless the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, in an action for a declaratory judgment brought by such state or subdivision against the United States, has determined that no such state or device has been used during the 5 years preceding the filing of the action for the purpose of or with the effect of denying or obliging the right to vote on account of race or color.
Stop right there. That's a lot. We've all heard that they used to give tests for the Negro that tried to vote.
What was it, a paper bag test? No.
It was various tests. Like they would give you a test to see if you could read, if you couldn't read.
Oh, okay.
So this is what this section is talking about. There's no more trick bags to stop you from voting, but I'm still asking the question, What document made us a citizen for us to have the right to vote? Because we see the 1964 Civil Rights Act ended intense military occupation, i.e. Jim Crow. Then they come back the following year with the 1965 Voting Rights Act. What document do we have that says we're citizens?
And yeah, that's an important question, because like you said, we know that they have certain procedures that they have to go through in order to become U.S. citizens. So like you say, what document and what procedures did our grandparents, or for some parents or even great grandparents, go through in order to become a U.S. citizen? Like you mentioned, one of the folks in the chat may have said a birth certificate. But again, we're seeing these immigrants go through a strict procedure of filing to become a U.S. citizen. What documents did our parents, grandparents, great grandparents file to become a U.S. citizen?
And I'm being honest, because based on this, like I said, everybody else has a procedure.
Right.
Anybody else comes over here, they on visas and green cards.
Right.
If we're from the land, and this was during my grandparents' time, they would have been full-grown adults in the 1960s. What United States government give them as documentation to say that you're a U.S. citizen?
Correct.
We don't have what the European has. The European can go back to his grandma and say, oh, my grandmother came from Italy. She's going to have them Ellis Island papers, whatever they get. What do we have that said that made us citizens? I'm asking a serious question. And if somebody can put it on the comment on this video or build on it in the chat, I'm being dead serious. What document can we stand on to say this is what made us a citizen? Because the 15th Amendment, this act is made to enforce the 15th Amendment. If you go back to the 15th Amendment, Chief Biko, there would be no need for this 1965 Voting Rights Act if, let them tell the story, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was for us.
Correct. Correct. Because we know they have a whole, what is it, a Naturalization Act. That's what, 1790 or something, the Naturalization Act. So basically, if you filed to become a U.S. citizen, your folks overseas, that's where you come from when you said, your people can become, my great grandma became a citizen of the United States. So now I'm a citizen since I'm born on this land. That applied to them. So again, we're not a part of this government in 1790. So we can't say this Naturalization Act applied to us, because if that was the case, then this whole, there wouldn't be no need for a 13th through 15th Amendment.
Right.
13th and 15th Amendment is obviously saying that we weren't applied, or this didn't apply to us then. So that's when we get this 65, and we're asking the same question, because again, they're using the same verbiage, yet what documents do we show that we are U.S. citizens? That birth certificate is not going to stand up.
And I could be the slowest one, but the 15th Amendment, Section 1 clearly says, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Section 2 says the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So if you fought a war called a Civil War and it gave niggas the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, go back to the document we're reading. If that document gave us the right to vote, then why the fuck did you have to do a 1965 Voting Rights Act? I'm talking about, I just got my hand, I'm in class. Remember when we were little, you had a hand like this, the teacher didn't want to see you. You would sit there waving your hand with your hand up. I got a question.
It's like, it ain't clicking for me. It ain't clicking for me yet. Y'all gonna have to continue to make that make sense again, because something off about this.
Right.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. We definitely have to open up our eyes and just continue to spread the information, because more people gotta get this.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure.
Do y'all have any kind of explanation for it? If the 15th Amendment gave citizens the right to vote, why the hell did they have to come back 100 years later and do a Voting Rights Act? And
it makes no sense.
If it's applying to us, then I got to look at my family and say, okay, what document made us citizens?
Yeah. And like you said, if we ain't got it, like you said, your mom was born before this act, meaning she wasn't a citizen until this act. So what document did your mom or your grandma get that said, okay, we citizens now, y'all. So now, baby, when you have your children, they'll be US citizens, so forth and so on.
Straight up.
Right.
And we're asking the question, where the fuck is this document? Because they're saying we weren't US citizens until 65. So ask your folks, ask your parents, or maybe you in this situation, or your grandparents, hey, where's that document where we became citizens? They were like, huh?
Have no clue.
Like you crazy. Have no clue.
Yeah.
And that's a legitimate question.
It's a legitimate question that we're not supposed to ask. We're not supposed to be thinking, but we're the only people that can't be deported.
Right.
Shows
It makes sense.
American. No, seriously, everybody else can lose their United States citizens privilege and they will send their ass back to where they come from. Because you know what would be a good scenario? We need an immigrant to keep it real and actually explain to us what is the procedure that y'all go through a US citizen. I've never heard anybody get in detail about that, but they probably stay quiet because they don't want to get that citizenship revoked and get deported.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The American Indian, here's another bullet in the chamber. If we're not the American, why are we the only people that can't be deported?
Right. So when they talk about go back to Africa, how? We can't just go back. We ain't come from there.
And I just want to highlight this when it comes to this race and color before we continue to build. And just show these women sitting on this bench. So when they say color, now these are all different shades of women, different races. But again, this is Ellis Island immigrants from Ellis Island. So like you just highlighted there, Chief Alligator and Quietwater, when they state that race and color, they're not specifying our group, they're specifying the world that they're now allowing to come into and be a United States citizen. Because you can see clearly here, this person could pass as a quote unquote Black person,
right?
African American, this person as well. Hell, all of them. Now we're seeing, like you stated when you asked that question, is that Congressional Black Caucus now just a front for the African immigrant coming to America? Because we see that every race has their caucus. We got the Asians, Hispanic, we have the African. So where's the American, aka Negro? Where's their representation underneath this government? Oh, there isn't one because they're not a part of this government.
Correct. And why are we not a part of this government? We have to go back to the 1830 Indian Removal Act. If your ancestors did not go west of the Mississippi from the 1830 Indian Removal Act, that's where we got declassified. We lost our nationality because the United States government waged unlawful war from 1830 up until now. Because when we say Negro, that Negro was once a Choctaw, Cherokee, Chickasaw. If we pull up that original map that predates the United States government, it tells you that Cherokee land is what we now know as Georgia and the Carolinas. It tells you that the same tribes that are now in Oklahoma, they descend from the southeast region of North America. So it ain't hard to figure out that the people that did not go into Oklahoma, they caught pure D hell for the next 100 years. They'll call it the Great Migration, but was actually unlawful wars, and people were running out of the South, going into the Midwest, going to Chicago, going to New York. That's how you get the Godfather of Harlem and your Bumpy Johnsons. Them niggas were hauling ass out of the Carolinas, running to New York, but they'll hide and use catch terms like the Great Migration. No, that was war.
Yeah.
So we have to deconstruct the words they use. They'll use words like Jim Crow. Jim Crow is just intense military occupation. Your ass get caught on the wrong side of town, we can clap you.
Yeah.
And there's no court system that you can run to for any kind of justice. You in no man's land because you didn't go to Oklahoma. So you a nigga because you're stubborn. Basically, we told you niggas to go to Oklahoma, so you didn't want to go. So nigga means stubborn to them. You're gonna learn the hard way. And we've been learning the hard way ever since the 1830 Indian Removal Act.
Facts. Facts. Jump back in here. So we have provided that no such declaratory judgment shall issue with respect to any plaintiff for a period of 5 years after the entry of a final judgment of any court of the United States, other than the denial of a declaratory judgment under this action, whether entered prior to or after the enactment of this act, determining that denials or abridgments of the rights to vote on account of race or color through the use of such tests or devices have occurred anywhere in the territory of such plaintiff. An action pursuant to this subsection shall be heard and determined by the court of 3 judges in accordance with the provisions of section 2284 of Title 28 of the United States Code, and any appeal shall lie to the Supreme Court. The court shall retain jurisdiction of any action pursuant to this subsection for 5 years after judgment, and shall reopen the action upon motion of the Attorney General alleging that a test or device has been used for the purpose or with the effect of denying or abridging the right to vote on account of race or color. If the Attorney General determines that he has no reason to believe that any such test or device has been used during the 5 years preceding the filing of the action for the purpose or with the effect of denying or abridging the right to vote on account of race or color, he shall consent to the entry of such judgment. The provisions of subsection A shall apply in any state or any political subdivision of a state which the Attorney General determines maintained on November 1st, 1964, any test or device, and with respect to which the Director of the Census determines that less than 50% of the persons of voting age residing therein were registered on November 1st, 1964, or that less than 50% of such persons voted in the presidential election of November 1964. A determination or certification of the Attorney General or of the Director of the Census under this section or under Section 6 or Section 13 shall not be reviewable in any court and shall be effective upon publication in the Federal Register. The phrase test or device shall mean any requirement that a person as a prerequisite for voting or registration for voting demonstrate the ability to read, write, understand, or interpret any matter, demonstrate any educational achievement or his knowledge or any particular subject, possess good moral character, or proved his qualifications by the voucher of registered voters or members of any other class.
You gonna break down what you just read?
So with this part here, what I got was basically just going over the different things that they would set up to have you even apply to be a voter. So it's just pretty much giving like a term or definition in regards to their tests or devices, at least within this last section. Do you have anything from this part? Seems just more procedures and operating procedures to me.
Yeah, it seems like just the steps that you had to take in order to qualify to vote.
I'm gonna ask a question real quick. How did you get on the census? How was the European able to account for your family members in whatever year that your family shows up on the census records for the United States government? How did you end up on the census?
They had to go door to door, right?
And
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and in order for them to go door to door and walk in your household and count the heads in that household and ask the oldest people in that household what they do, and for you to answer all those questions, that would mean what?
You weren't a slave. Or you had something going for yourself, right?
Okay. That would also mean that the year that your family shows up on the census is the year that your family was under United States government military occupation.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
So let's
Okay.
say your family goes back to census records of the 1700s. When you look at that area that your family was in, that means that they had militia and they had military occupying that area, because put yourself in those situations. You got to feel safe to go in foreign neighborhoods and knock on doors and actually get in people's business like that, right?
Right.
So
That's true.
what we're doing, if you look at it from the American side of the coin, when you brag about how far back your family census record dates to, you're actually bragging on when your family became military occupied.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
In a weird kind of way, like, oh, I can trace my family back to the 1700s. Okay, that just means your family was under military occupation in the 1700 census, 1790 census. Because we're putting other pieces to the puzzle together. If the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment didn't apply to us, and that Civil Rebellion wasn't about us, here we are in 1960s, and now we're becoming citizens. Then what that means is, soon as your family pops up on these US government documents, that was just a head count to know where their enemy was located and what their enemy was doing and how much they that was just intel. The census was just intel for their military and their government. Any thoughts on that, y'all? I mean, it's the truth. It's because I'm going to say this and somebody prove me wrong. Lyndon Johnson was the first president for the Negro. It wasn't George Washington.
I agree with that.
It wasn't Roosevelt. Your first president, if you Negro, if you descend from prisoners of war on the land, based on historical record, your first president was Lyndon Baines Johnson, because he gave you the right to vote, and he's the one that removed intense military occupation, i.e. Jim Crow.
I would agree. I would agree with that. And I think it's going to be more prevalent than the next document, that statement. Because right now, just reading off, the 1957 through now the 65 that we're reading, still nothing pertaining to the Negro. Yeah, he mentioned it in the video that we highlighted in the beginning of the stream, but again, nothing specific within these documents to the Negro. So I think what you just, stated is going to be more prevalent within that next document in regards to that 68. Because as far as right now, still don't see anything specifying our group. We're just seeing race and color in regards to this vote.
And I'm just thinking out loud, just looking at where we are right now. How much we got left before we finish up this section?
Let me see. I think we at the very top, of this page. So we can come to a stopping point, and then pull up those other documents. Let me see. Yeah, we're at the top of page 3 right now. So yeah, we can stop here and then go into that Congressional Black Caucus, and then the other document here. In the crisis. So let me pull that up.
And these are just things that we should be critically thinking about when it pertains to us. What document made us US citizens? And if the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment applied to us, then why was there a 1965 Voting Rights Act? If the 15th Amendment supposedly gave us the right to vote, why couldn't we vote until 1965? Let me say that again. If the 15th Amendment gave all US citizens the right to vote, why was the Negro not allowed to vote until 1965, 100 years later? the lies, the story that we were told in school is not making sense when you read the documents. The lie ain't adding up.
Correct. No, I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that. But again, just highlighting these different groups that have these caucuses underneath this government. And here's another one, the one that's supposed to be, or that is masked as representing our group, the Congressional Black Caucus. But again, let's go ahead and read again that about section, because we definitely forget exactly what it states here. So let's go ahead. It says, since its establishment in 1971, the Congressional Black Caucus has been committed to using the full constitutional power, statutory authority, and financial resources of federal government to ensure that African Americans and other marginalized communities in the United States have the opportunity to achieve the American dream.
Stop right there. Stop right there. That African Americans and other marginalized communities. Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1968 stated that Negroes, due to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, can now eat safely with their families. The word Afro-American was not in the lexicon at that time. So the Afro-American is not us, is what I'm saying at this point on history and law. What I'm saying is the Afro-American are people that are coming from Nigeria, Ghana, Gambia. This Black Caucus represents that group of people and other marginalized communities. It does not represent quote unquote Black people, because Lyndon Baines Johnson did not say Black people now have the right to eat in restaurants. He said Negro. Negro is not in any document under the United States government, except for the 1866 Indian treaties. That's the only time you're going to see the word Negro. And the word Negro in the 1866 Indian treaties was pertaining to how the Negro can operate within the court structure of all 5 civilized tribes that's located now in Oklahoma, which the de jure tribes are going to be east of the Mississippi River. I hope that's not confusing people, what I just said. The people in Oklahoma, they got the name, but they're not the people. Cherokee land was in what we now know as Georgia. We may have to pull that map up next week, Chief Biko, as we read this, so we can show that map that predates the United States government, where it shows where these tribes originate from. The people that, if your bloodline go back to the area known as Georgia and Carolina, that was Cherokee country. They took a small portion of them people via their military and walked them on Tom and Jerry into Oklahoma. So now you got those people claiming to be from the bloodline of the original people who we descend from. Because my great-great-grandparents did not go into Oklahoma. That's when we lost our birthright and became Negro. So here we are now, 1965, you get a Voting Rights Act, you get a Black Caucus 6 years later. We're sitting here in 2023 wondering why have they not entered a police reform bill? And Tyree Nichols, what has been about 6 or 7 weeks, this caucus still hasn't entered anything in for the Black. I'm saying it don't represent Black.
Yeah, don't hold no power. That the Negro holds more lawful power than this Black term and this African American term. It's like you highlighted, we see Negro within that 1866, within the 1866 Indian treaties. It's multiple treaties. And also this president is mentioning the Negro now has these rights underneath these civil rights acts. So yeah, Negro will be the only thing that would hold any type of power. So when it comes to any documents or these groups and organizations, this African American term, Black term holds no power, holds no weight underneath this government, hence why it's dead legally. So yeah, you can use these different terms and stuff like that. So that's definitely a great point. Okay.
Yeah, it's just not, it's not, I think that makes more sense for their inability to represent, because at this point, once the average person like ourselves that are not in government understand that Congress makes law, then the only thing you should be asking the Black Congressional Caucus is, why are you not submitting documents into the House to be voted on in Congress? It's just that simple.
Right.
We don't need nothing. We don't need an executive order from Biden. We need Congress to vote on something, and we need to see exactly if it gets passed or if it doesn't get passed. They bullshit. They're bullshitting with entering anything in the Congress for us because they don't work for us. That's where I'm at.
Exactly. Right. Which is why they always have to put that language in, the general language of working for everybody in all communities.
Correct. Makes sense why they put, like you said, just that other marginalized communities. And yeah, definitely want to highlight this too. So shout out to Original Copper Empress, because yeah, this definitely does go in alignment. Let's try to drop this real quick. See if it can go. Because when I pulled it up on the actual link,
It was highlighted.
Yeah, it was highlighted. Let me pull it up again. I just had to move it over to another browser. But it is, what is this? Okay, here we go. So between 1800 and 1900, the American Indians lost more than half of their population, and their portion in the total US population dropped from 10.15% to 0.31%. Throughout the 19th century, while the US population grew by 20 to 30% every 10 years, the Indian population experienced a precipitous decline. Currently, the Indian and Alaska Native population accounts for only 1.3% of the total US population. So again, we're seeing this theme of, constant warring on our group of people. Then we see these acts that don't repair our people in any kind of way. As we stated, our folks wasn't worried about no damn voting rights. Folks wasn't worried about getting employed by these people. Why would we want to get employed by the same people that's killing us on a daily?
Exactly.
So we're reading these documents again, for one, to see when we are becoming or coming up underneath this government, for one, but also to point out the hypocrisy, because again, none of these things were being asked for. Again, we just wanted to end the intense military occupation known as Jim Crow laws.
Hold on, I'm gonna go down to that second point where it says deteriorating living conditions. And that second paragraph right here, it says there are currently about 310 Native American reservations in the United States. When you hear the word Native American, just think Asian Mongoloid, right? According for about 2.3% of the US territory, and not all federally recognized tribes have their own reservations. These reservations are mostly located in remote and barren areas with poor living conditions and inadequate access to water and other vital resources, where 60% of the road system are dirt or gravel roads. On the surface, Indians are no longer the subject of extermination, but just forgotten. Indians would be us.
Right.
Native Americans would be Mongoloid.
Correct.
Indians are no longer the subject of extermination, but just forgotten. And discriminated against. Who was under Jim Crow?
Us.
The Indians.
That's crazy.
I'm just putting this together. Yet in reality, they are simply left there for self-extermination. Now,
and when was this document dated?
I'm not sure yet, but just drilling down on this real quick, the 2.3% that they're accounting for Native Americans, they can account for them because they're on reservations, i.e. military work camps. They weren't accounting for the Negro because those of us that did not go west into Oklahoma, you understand? If we're not US citizens, they're not accounting for that.
Right.
We didn't become US citizens until the 1960s. So it makes sense that that Asian Mongoloid number would be 2.3%. And then you look at the Indian, Indians are no longer the subject of extermination, but just forgotten. What are they doing right now? Removing our history from schools.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
We don't have any specific legislation ever written for us. We're just forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing we could do right now is make motherfucking noise.
Yep.
That's the only way you're going to get talked about. And then it says, but just forgotten, invisible, and discriminated against.
Is that not the whole Jim Crow?
That's the whole Jim Crow. Who was the state saying Negro, black, and colored couldn't do this? You couldn't do that. You couldn't be caught in sundown towns. That's us.
So you discriminated against, you're invisible within their civil rights acts because, again, they're not specifying you.
Right.
And then you're forgotten because we're no longer talking about you within our curriculum.
Now,
Just denied and neglected.
I'm gonna hit that paragraph right up under that. This is the cherry on top. The U.S. government has also systematically used Indian reservations as toxic or nuclear waste dumps through the means of deception and coercion, subjecting them to long-term exposure to uranium and other radioactive materials. What have we always heard about the ghettos, Chief Quietwater, when we were growing? Ghettos are gone now. So this generation won't know ghettos or projects.
Yeah.
What was always known about ghettos and projects? Where were they historically placed? Near hyper radioactive,
Oh, yeah.
Power
put the
plants.
ghetto next to the
Power
damn
plant,
jail.
industrial areas,
Industrial
by
area.
highways.
High voltage shit and all that, yeah.
As a result, the cancer incidence and fatality rates in the communities concerned is significantly higher than in other parts of the country. When did our ancestors start dying of cancer? When you think about it, cancer wasn't a thing. Cancer wasn't a thing until
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Here's the bomb, the last sentence. Indian communities have effectively become the garbage cans in the development process of the United States. Who gets dumped in our communities when we were growing up? All the new immigrants get dumped in our
Yeah.
What happened? Where do drugs get put? Well, let's stop calling it drugs and let's call it what it was. Chemical warfare.
Chemical warfare, yeah.
When the United States government did chemical warfare on us through heroin in the crack era, and now it's the pill epidemic. We are the garbage can.
Yeah. Or they call it the development process of the United States. Everything is just dumped into our neighborhoods where we live.
Copper Empress dropped this link.
Yeah, shout out to you, Copper Empress. This is great.
Yeah.
Hey, this right here just further enhances. Yeah, it's just acts of war.
Cherry on the top, man.
Damn.
Yeah.
Now hold on, scroll to the top. Who wrote this?
Now, who wrote this? It says Republic of China.
So here we go, y'all. The world knows who the American
knows. Facts.
Facts. Wow.
Now here's a question that I have going back to the Black Caucus. Who represents us? This is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We don't have that for our people.
Right.
The Black Caucus would be the equivalent. The Black Caucus represents Africans coming to America. We don't have any entity that does what this Minister of Foreign Affairs reported from China. Here's a whole nother country, a whole nother continent,
Right.
a whole nother government. How do they know our history more than we do?
Right, exactly.
Facts.
That's crazy.
So this further proves that this is what we all got to do. We all have to sit down and know what happened to us. Show me a group of people that don't know their history. I'm going to show you a group of people with fucked up politics. When we don't know what happened to us on the land, they can run anything on us. Damn, it says the American genocide of the Indians. Historical facts and real evidence. And this was written last year.
Same time.
March. Damn near a year ago.
Got all this data, but they still doing what research when it comes to what reparations.
Wow.
We're gonna need years and shit, but yeah, no, a great find.
The American genocide. So we're not crazy when we say we're prisoners of war. Other groups of people on the planet know, boy, it's fucked up what y'all doing to them over there.
Right. We got to open up our eyes.
Yeah.
evidence on the U.S. government's genocide against Indians.
And they break it down.
Talking about
Definitely.
Second War of Independence, talking about
The fact that they're actually calling us Indians.
It even has the Homestead Act in here in 1860.
Mhm.
The United States enacted the Homestead Act, which provided that here's where the language comes, they're not American citizens, they're U.S. citizens.
correct.
Above the age of 21 with a mere registration fee of $10 US could acquire no more than 160 acres. We did a build on that on Copper Empress page.
Yeah.
So this is further proof that the world knows what happened to us. We just don't know.
Mhm.
We're doing the right thing. It's just that enough of us have to wake up and read.
Exactly.
Thank you for this, Copper Empress, because this is, we built on this.
Yeah.
Damn. It's right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Bloody massacres and atrocities. So everybody around the world is keeping an account of what's happened to us. And that's crazy. That shows how powerful we are, because we're walking around not knowing what happened and we're still here. But everybody around the world is like, my God, y'all got black, broken nose, teeth missing.
Walk around like Daffy Duck after getting hit by a truck and just keep on trucking. We still got to play out. Like, this shit crazy, man.
Oh my God.
We're literally living in what's that, the Truman Show. Everybody my ass in a bubble and like, damn, these niggas don't know who the fuck they are. Like, this shit is all a script.
Under the bloody massacres, statistics reveal that since its independence in 1776, the U.S. government has launched over 1,500 attacks on Indian tribes, slaughtering the Indians, taking their lands, and committing countless crimes, whether it be lynchings. Come on, y'all. In 1814, the U.S. government decreed that it would award $50 to $100 for each Indian skull surrendered. That lines right up with the lynching photos that we see. The American historian Frederick Turner acknowledged in the significance of the frontier in American history, released in 1893, that each frontier was won by a series of wars against the Indians. That's what we're saying about the Seminole Wars and all these other wars. There was never a declaration of war issued by the United States government. It's like it wasn't a head up fade. They never faded us head up. It was always sneak attacks.
Yeah.
The United States government has never came out and said, they've never had their Congress vote and say, all right, we getting ready to go to war against the Cherokee.
Right.
That's what we're saying. You're not going to find any declaration of war document, but you see treaty.
Yeah.
So how you got treaties, but you ain't got declarations of war?
Yeah. Treaty supposed to end the war, but you ain't never declared it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great document.
And this again just shows again, like you highlighted, the world knows the history. So at this point, they like, well, shit, we ain't gonna help nobody out unless you motherfuckers stand up for yourself. You see what I'm saying? Even on that aspect, like, yeah, we see all the shit happening to y'all, but I mean, if y'all cool with it, we definitely gonna step in and use our manpower. We would never be like that, but hey, it's just y'all better wake up type shit.
I'm gonna read this document because it's definitely I mean, we got the proof of claim from this government backing everything. And that's another thing that we have to wonder about with our teachers or our scholars that teach history. They point to books. They're not reading documents. Here's another government citing to documents, like when they talk about the gold rush under that section. The California gold rush also brought about the California massacre. It was a gold rush to the European. It wasn't a gold rush to us because we were already trading with, like, you got to put yourself as the American. It was a gold rush to them.
It's simple to us.
We've been putting gold in our mouth and gold on our bodies. This shit ain't new to us. It was new to them.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop right now.
No, them facts, man. This it's a great document to close out on. And again, shout out to you, Copper Empress, for dropping this bomb for real. Even goes in here to Creek launched the Creek War against, but again, never declared it. but they know all of the assaults that happened against our people. Oh, man.
But understand, the more we start to understand what happens, we're going to upset. Damn. It's like everybody who pushes this African theory or this Pan-Africanism theory, you know, they've invested so much in this over the last 60 years. There's so many books been written using the term African and slave. And so the more this truth comes out, you got to realize that you're fucking up their pockets, because they wrote intellectual property that they continue to have their grandkids eat off that and their kids eat off that literature. The more we wake up, the harder it's gonna be hard for them books to sell with this whole African-American concept when the more of us start to realize that we're the Americans. So you got to keep that in mind too.
Yeah.
That's why they're going to push back against this truth, because we're not supposed to realize. And I don't think I'm wrong, bro. I think the Black Congressional Caucus was created to help the people from the continent of Africa coming over here to become United States citizens. Which is why they go to Ghana and yeah, they do nothing specifically for us. They do more work for them.
Facts.
Just saying.
Facts. Come on, y'all. Shit ain't. I'm gonna put two and two together. Shit makes sense, man. Shit makes sense.
So there's some people right now turning over some chairs. If some of them bougie Negroes watching this video, they like, God damn it. You know, but hey, the truth got to come out eventually. Yeah, bro, that was the investment, was to keep us focused on another landmass and not make us look at what happened to our grandparents. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Teach them niggas about Egypt. Don't teach them niggas about what happened in the South.
Correct. Yeah, man. Definitely great build. Great build.
Thanks to
today.
everybody in the chat.
For sure. Yeah, definitely shout out to everybody in the chat, asking those questions. And yeah, the question as far as the assignment to take home until next week, what's the question, what document do we have that shows we went through a procedure or anything like that to become a U.S. citizen? What document do your parents have, your grandparents have, that say, hey, you are now considered a United States citizen underneath this government? We have yet to see it. You know, every other group, every immigrant that comes on this land goes through paperwork, filing procedures, whole organization, whole process to become a U.S. citizen. What was our process? It's like you highlighted, Chief Quietwater and Alligator. We can't be deported. So where's our process at?
And who's the Negro's first president under the United States government? Well, that's not even a
Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yeah, that's a statement that we're making. We're saying that Lyndon B. Johnson is the Negro's first president because you weren't made a citizen until 1964, 65. So yeah, that's just a fact. It's a harsh reality.
Yeah.
And who does the Black Caucus really work for? That's another question that you find that you got to ask yourself. If these people have been in existence since 1971, and if you did a mathematical evaluation of them, what specific legislation have they put in place specifically for our group? It's going to be 0.001. It's going to be less than 1%. So yeah, it's obvious at this point. We got some serious questions.
No, facts. Absolutely. Shoot. Till next time, y'all. Appreciate y'all rocking with us. Again, another great build. Should we gonna continue to go ahead and break down these documents through this timeline?